Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. So, ah, as a writer, you will always constantly be evolving and changing the way you do things and say things because you're trying to get, well, see, that's the thing. As a writer, you realize what you have to write about, and not have to, but you realize what you're writing about, and then it changes until you get to the whole thing, and you have to have it in your mind. I mean, you can start writing, and things will evolve from that. And so that's one of the keys to writing, is the creative process, that what you write about at one point will change until you figure out the main point, and you bring everything together. And that includes all the different characters that you have, and as well as anything else that you're writing about. So anyways, I'm going to get to my Facebook. And today I gave my little doggie a walk. She pooped and she peed. And I hand fed her, and I'm going to hand feed her 3 times a day until she gets back on some kind of schedule. Because before all of this COVID stuff and before all this jelly juice stuff, she was a self-feeder. She just ate the kibble. She had the predispositions. And then since doing the jelly juice and the COVID, her predispositions had to come to surface, which meant that there wasn't going to be a set schedule for peeing, for pooing. There wasn't going to be a set schedule for eating, because even I ate and pooped and peed at different times of the day. And so it's like at some point when you get down to a prototype, whatever that is, and you see everything else reversed, and I'm gonna say about my dog, and now she needs to gain some weight. Now it's getting her appetite back up and getting on an eating schedule that will help her gain the weight and get back some of her strength, because she has lost a lot of strength with all this fucking COVID stuff. It's a pain in the ass. And so, yeah, when you have predispositions and you're dealing with new viruses in the environment, it's insane the amount of evolution, adaptation you must go through to assimilate, and then you have to keep feeding that energy, feeding. And dogs can get anorexia. I mean, before all this COVID shit, she was definitely a different dog, and yeah, she was programmed to be a certain way, but now it's just kind of starting from square one when you think about it. So anyways, so the last couple days I've been talking about the alimentary canal and how it's elementary, and the mouth and the anus were the first things to develop in gestation, and then the universe and all the cosmos people, the physics people, the astrophysics people, I don't know, they're all developing theories. I mean, we know about NASA going into some aspects of space. How far? Well, that's the storylines that we are assuming to be true, because we are on a timeline number system that goes from 0 all the way to infinity. And there's so many different configurations between 0 and infinity. And there's so many different storylines and different theories and all of that. And so when you only get to a certain point, where you're orbiting around the Earth, because assuming, we are in an atmosphere, okay? Atmos is like outermost sphere. When you think about it, atmosphere, outermost sphere. So when you're on the outskirts of the concentric circles, okay? When you're out there, that's the outermost sphere, outer atmosphere. And if you're orbiting the outermost sphere, atmosphere, then yeah, you could do certain things from space. You can look and spy on things. You have the Google Earth, you have the satellites. You even can develop a whole thing about the aliens. Okay? And so And so anyways, and so we understand all the theories and the physics and the astrophysics and all the things about it. But when you think about the universe and the whole Anunnaki, and I never thought about picking apart the word Anunnaki. If I hadn't studied the word Anunnaki, I wouldn't have been able to see then the relationship between like, you know, an apple and, you know, and an envelope and, you know, parts of speech. Okay. And so then you think about words like anus and analyze and analysis and, you know, retentive and anger. You know, why does anger come from the anus? Because everything starts off in the anus. And yes, it's going through the mouth, but that's where things get trapped, is in the anus. Literally, things get trapped in the anus. And so if I hadn't studied the Anunnaki and Enlil and Inanna and On and in whatever, then I wouldn't be able to see the root words, the etymology behind all the words that we are using that are so prevalent. And then assimilate, ASS, assimilate, simulation, assumption, association, you know, you see now then the patterns in the words out there that have to do with the ass, the anus, the everything. And you're like, oh my God, there's a whole world into these words. And so then you realize that everything starts in the anus, ends in the mouth, mouth begins, or the anus begins. I mean, and so anything in between, called the alimentary canal, then is being controlled and programmed, yes, but also it's you know, it's where deterioration and where evolution, adaptation, where the beginning, you know, relative to where you're coming from, starts. And so then the universe, is on your anus. That's the universe. The wormholes are your intestines, when you think about it. And that's what drives your brain. See, the brain doesn't get developed first when you are just starting to go through the development stages. The brain, when does the brain develop? At what point does the brain develop in gestation? At what point does the brain begin to develop? 3 to 4 weeks after conception. Okay, 6 weeks, 5 weeks pregnant, just 16 days. Okay, there's so many different. So the anus and the mouth begin first. That's where everything begins. And so if the brain doesn't develop until, 3, 4, 16 days, 3 to 4 weeks from birth to age 5, that's really broad. But, you know, if the brain doesn't develop until way later after the mouth and the anus, then the mouth and the anus is what develops the brain, is what can program the brain. And so then you think about then the outermost atmosphere, the outermost sphere, which is the atmosphere, and the edge of the universe. Okay, that's the beginning of life. It starts. Well, atmosphere. Well, yeah, the atmosphere is out there. You are the center of the universe, and then each concentric circle. So, and then the whole rings, the 9 circles of hell, and why they call it circles, because of the sphincter. So, anyway, so then you realize then everything is programmed between the mouth and the anus, and also what you eat, what you take to suppress your first lines of defense, and then what you take to suppress your second lines of defense, which is then causing people to be programmed and cured. And so then I asked the question, you know, will the new viruses bring about taller, more advanced people, humans who are vastly more intelligent? How does adapting to your environment translate with so many phenotypical characteristics? Those who use the cures will constantly cause the uncured to adapt, because when you're using cures, you're still dropping your phenotypical DNA characteristics and everything else you're doing under the sun. And so someone who is uncured will always have to adapt to the cured, because the cured's always dropping DNA. And so if everyone was uncured and then we all were assimilated to each other, there wouldn't be all of this disease and cancer. But since people want to be cured and they're also on the decline and they're taking their antibiotics and all their remedies, this is why we have back-to-back pandemics. And they can be small ones like the cold and flu season every year, or it can be large ones like the COVID or the flu back in 1918, or the Black Plague or the AIDS virus and all that. And so what will humans look like if half the population is not cured and the other population is cured? Well, the people who are uncured are going to have to adapt to the cured, because they are the ones setting the tone. And so if you have 500 million people and 200 million people have 200 million different phenotypical characteristics, then the 300 million people who are uncured are going to have to keep adapting to them plus each other. But here's the thing. I felt the heat this morning in my face. I felt the heat, not like the heat like being sunburned, because I can see I have a little sunburn, right? But I felt like, stuff come to surface and I'm blowing my nose, and that's it. I went to Walmart yesterday. I didn't have any mask. I went into Walmart. Oh no, I did have a mask. That's right. I did. They had one. They gave me a mask. I wore it. I mean, I walked into Walmart to the edge where the greeter was, and trying to fiddle around because the mask was like super tight. It was one of those, looked like an N95 type of mask. It wasn't the blue surgical mask. It was one that was like so tight around the nose, around the mouth and everything. And it was a little uncomfortable for a minute, but I got used to it because I know how aggressive this environment is. So I went into Walmart with a mask, yes. And when I left Walmart, went outside, took the mask off, okay. But I felt a little heat. That's the extent of it. I felt a little heat in my face. Even when I was in Walmart and I was looking for the type of meat to eat, I felt the heat in Walmart. So I knew something got in. It wasn't like a vast amount. And so I felt the heat, but that was it. No, I didn't really have any fatigue. I don't feel any kind of weirdness. I feel strong and clear-headed as ever. Developing new routines right now because, yes, the sun's out. My dog is on a different stage of development, and so I'm introducing new routines to her, and I'm doing my own routines, and I figured out where everything starts and are able to substantiate it. So then, okay, so what kind of humans will be left after this antibiotic purge of the old world? Well, again, biotech is always going to be slicing and dicing, always going to be introducing new types of viruses, because they're going to be creating therapies from the viruses that are being uncovered from the glaciers, from different parts of the world, because we're going to have climate change, and you can say it's, contrived or instigated by someone, or it's as a result of so many humans who are infecting each other, causing extreme global warming. Because when you have so much infection in your body, that contributes to the warmth. Infection adds more heat, higher pressure to any kind of community. That's why you saw during the riots, there was so much heat and so much instability, and then things happened, like the Rittenhouse stuff. And so, yeah, global warming is something that can be contrived because the amount of people with the amount of infection. And then this is why also you're seeing the amount of the resurgence of old viruses come back, and kids are developing, liver transplants, or they have to get liver transplants, liver failure or stuff like that, because of hepatitis A and hepatitis B, C, D, and F. And not because of their therapeutic status, because it's already in the population and it was just kind of asleep through all the therapies, and then there was a breakthrough infection. And that comes from aggressive viruses with aggressive therapies stimulating the immune system to then bring all the infection. And it could be, so your infection is not just COVID, it's everything else you've ever dealt with and all the different remedies you've ever used that is being purged out in the atmosphere. So what kind of people will be left after all this antibiotic purge? Well, biotech is still going to splice and dice. There's going to be new viruses out there that say back in the prehistoric days, okay, fine, whatever, we can go down that timeline. But there'll be new viruses coming to surface, which will warrant then new therapies, which will warrant then more pandemics. And so what will be left, it will just be the strongest prototype left. Because those that believe they should die someday, that are heavily therapized in the holistic and the allopathic world, who, yeah, it's the Department of Defense. They are the bioweapons against humanity because the amount of antibiotics and the amount of programming that is used against your environment. And so what will be left? Well, it's hard to say what will be left. There'll be very strong humans, yes, that like those on the JJ meta mentality who understand that they must adapt and that you must strengthen your first lines of defense. You already will figure out your second lines of defense because the JJ will help and the salt water will help clear the pipes, clear the alimentary canal, allow the communication between all the points in your alimentary canal and then all the systems and organs that are attached to it. But then it goes deeper than that. Then it goes into regenerating the cells that were deficient or that weren't existing because of the person not eating enough or whatever. And so you'll be regenerating things, lengthening your telomeres. And so what kind of people will be left? Those that have strengthened this part. And which means that when you are around people using antibiotics, when you're around people who are dropping all of their DNA that is laced with all the different therapies and the programming from the therapies, you're able to defend yourself against those that are using antibiotics, those that are heavily therapized, those that are using all the different medicines. And it can be all the way from the over-the-counter to some herbal remedy in their garden that they're using on an excessive basis, all the way to something like chemotherapy, like cannabis, like radiation, all the oncology, all the different therapies that are programmed against anything in your environment. And nothing should be the enemy. A virus is not an enemy. The viruses, the parasites, the protozoa, the proteins, the fungus, and the bacteria are not the enemy. But the therapies world determine they are the enemy. And when you determine that your own microbiome, full of life, microbes, of viruses, parasites, protozoa, proteins, fungus, and bacteria, when you declare war on your body, that is antibiotic, and that's what you, as a person on the JJ meta mentality, are fighting against. Those have declared war on not only themselves, but everyone around them. And that's why I say that biotech, when it comes to the therapies world, is like a bioweapon, and they are attached to the Department of Defense. Because imagine your whole lymphatic system is like a huge Department of Defense, and it's attached to your gut. Your gut and your lymphatic system were developed first, because how else are you supposed to program a person based upon a specific phenotypical characteristic or a genetic characteristic with phenotypical phenotypical diversity? It starts in the anus, starts in the mouth, and then the gut. That's everything in between the mouth and the anus, and everything else then develops from that point forward. So I don't know what kind of humans we left after the antibiotic purge, but does it really matter? Okay, you're supposed to have a defense system that will let some information come through to help you assimilate to whatever is predominant. So if I'm around, let's say I'm here in Ohio, and I'm predominantly among African American and Caucasian people. Okay, I don't really see anybody Asian on my street. I'm probably the only Asian on my street. And so if everybody in my community was uncured, the strongest prototype will be what everyone has to assimilate to. Okay? But since I'm in a cured world right now in my block where people are dying and reproducing every day, there really is no strong prototype I'm going to be assimilating to, because everyone's dying and reproducing, causing chaos. And they're under different therapies which I have to then go and defend myself against. And so then I will develop whatever. I don't know what I'm going to look like when everyone around me is still cured and using the therapies. Am I going to stay the same? Well, I don't, it just depends on what I'm assimilating to and who has the strongest genetic DNA phenotypical characteristics that I'm taking on. And essentially I'm taking on the world, because the world is throwing their DNA into the wind. It's all in the therapies, because all the testing centers are using different aspects of DNA, and it's being purified, used for monoclonal antibodies therapies, as well as other types of therapies. And so when people are in my world using all the therapies of the world's DNA, then I'm going to be having to assimilate to the fucking world. Not to mention, if I ever go anywhere else that is out of my immediate influence, it's whatever else they're doing. And if you get on a plane and you go, in a train or an automobile in mass transit, you're taking on the world too. But not everybody's going to assimilate. They're going to be cannibalized by the world. So you either assimilate to the world, literally, because it's everywhere, or you get cannibalized by the world. Who will be left? The strong will only survive. This is the microbial Hunger Games. And so then you realize then all of the whole universe stuff is all theories, that the atmosphere is the outermost sphere. When you see the satellites and you see NASA or Jeff Bezos' little airplane or rocket ship looks like a penis, or you see NASA and the shuttle, and they're just orbiting the outermost sphere, the atmosphere, the last little bit of concentric circle, because if they go too much further out, they don't have enough of the collective conscious to develop a simulation to then give them the path to be able to live and survive. I mean, you create your reality every single time you have a collective conscious working behind you, then developing the simulations as you move forward. The reason why you go over to that side of town is because somebody else assimilated and simulated that simulation for you. There's houses, there's trees, there's landscaped, there's people. But then you go somewhere like where there's nothing. The only simulation is the grass. Here in Ohio, you go out to the furthest outermost sphere of your concentric centralized district, then you're out into the wilderness where the houses are further apart, a lot of farmland, and it's a little scary because there really isn't anybody around to protect you if you need the protection. And so it's you and the elements and you and whoever else is out there doing whatever they're doing. And so there's no simulation out there except for the grass or for the natural simulation. So imagine going outer space where you don't have the atmosphere, the troposphere, to give you all the nitrogen and the oxygen and all the different gases that you need to survive. And so then you have to develop space stations and or figure out the easiest path to get from one planet to another. And that's another development by who you'll never know. Okay, you hear about the 9 or the 8 planets, and some have been said that they actually are habitable, and maybe some aliens are living under the moon. I don't know. I mean, we hear all this stuff, but there's no way for us to know, because we know how Hollywood, how so exact Hollywood is. And like Wag the dog, you know how exact and so perfect our government is when it comes to rolling out simulations, rolling out political thought processes, rolling out specific events at certain times through numerology, gematria. And so you just kind of have to go with the flow. Everything gets developed through stories, and then stories are backed up by chemistry and physics, and then people who are supporting that simulation that maybe you know or don't know, or maybe you know that you're going, people going into biotech or they're going into their different think tanks, they're developing these simulations way before you even know that they even existed. And then the simulation exists, and you're like, where did this come from? There was a whole bunch of people who didn't even know they were part of that simulation were contributing to it. Like what's going on right now. Where we are right now with this pandemic, with all the therapies, with everyone having their issues and mental issues and blaming each other, that wasn't organic. That was developed. That was a think tank that developed the people to be at each other's throats. And that's part of the survival of the fittest. Okay, divide and conquer. It is a war tactic. You know the art of war, Sun Tzu, and you hear about all the different psychological operations and all the things that people use to do, like, to brainwash each other, like neuro-linguistic programming. I was going to sell truck insurance because someone wanted to recruit me to go sell truck insurance at truck stops when my husband was on the road a whole lot when I was on the road with him. And they're like, yeah, there's this whole new way of selling people. It's called neuro-linguistic programming, where you actually put the words in their mouth where they're like, yes, yes, I'll buy your insurance. Yes, yes. And that's what is it, manufactured consensus through the media, through the marketer, and so there's so many ways of which you can get people to say yes or no, or be at each other's throats and blame for whatever's going on. And there's just so many different skirmishes and things that go on so many different fronts. And so whatever you see right now was a planned thing. And how you react, it's all scripted. Not saying that you know that you're part of the script. No, because people are easily manipulated. People are easily distracted, manipulated, and they're easily led by somebody else's script that sounds good. And if you don't have any other purpose, you're going to adopt somebody else's purpose. And so humans are like a vessel, and they need to be filled by someone or something. And if it's not filled by someone or something, then they're kind of like aimless, wandering aimlessly. And so that's why parents who understand this in the academic world know then to give their kids and their dependents a purpose, whether it's a religion to rebel against, or a political thought process to rebel against, or a scientific dogma to support or rebel against. At least you're doing something with your life. And there's always going to be a place for someone who doesn't know how to develop their own purpose. And so that's where it's how easy it is to fall into these arguments, into these wars, into all this stuff. And so then you realize that the English language is what develops a simulation. I can't even speak to the Spanish or Chinese, but they all have their own simulations. I mean, look at China. They have a simulation. Everyone's in uniform. It's like a communist uniformity, okay? Russia, same thing on some level, I guess. I mean, I don't know too much about Russia. I hear stuff about it. But they also, like I've heard through the conspiracy world, like the InfoWars, like Charlotte Iserbyt, and how they've fashioned the education industry. And I guess it's based upon a Russian prototype, a Russian model. Okay, fine. I don't know. And so it's like every language out there has specific simulations. But then when you understand the English language, because what came first? Which language came first? That's the thing. Well, yeah, cuneiform. But then, okay, after cuneiform, supposedly, this is based upon the storylines that were told, as far as the Sumerian pantheon. Were they the first gods, or were they the first gods that they told us about? We don't know. So when it comes to the English language, we heard that there was more than 26 letters in the alphabet. Okay, well, at this point, we're working with 26 letters in the alphabet, which means you're limited to 26 letters that can be in so many different, versions of each other, and developing the chemistry that you live in. Because you have to have a name for oxygen. You have to have a name for the different, compounds that are out there, salt and sugar and nitrogen, all that stuff. So it has to be names. Those names have to have some kind of meaning, and the meanings can change based upon how you use it. And then, of course, like I said, how you use the words like Trump can be a noun, an adverb, an adjective, and a verb, and it just depends on how you use it. And then things can develop, things can mutate, things can change and all that stuff, and adapt and evolve and all that. So anything is possible when it comes to language, and you can develop your own purpose. But it also means you have to understand all the arguments. You can't just promote just one side of the argument. Then if you do, then you're so biased. Well, more than just biased, you've completely blinded yourself to the other sides of the world that you never knew existed. You don't have to travel to see how others live. Because when I went to China, when I went to Portugal, when I went to, Hawaii, yeah, it was nice. The terrain was interesting. But the people were, it's interesting to see indigenous. I can see poor people here. I've traveled to like South Central LA. I've lived in the really rich, ritzy areas and was a nanny in the really rich areas. And then I also lived so poor in the hotels and was next to crack whores or crackheads or whatever. And so you've seen all the different humanity. And so the only difference is just the architecture, maybe the weather. But even then, the trade winds of Hawaii is no different than maybe parts of the Bay Area during certain times of the season. So then you're like, okay, so is it really that different? It's the same, like when I go to different towns, okay, you go into this antique shop, you go into this art store, okay, you go into this bookstore, okay, you go into this, this really cool looking deli, and you eat some cheese over here, in Pleasanton, and that's somebody else's simulation. That's somebody else's brainchild. That's somebody else's purpose they're giving you to go to travel to all the time. So then why don't you develop your own brainchild? Why don't you develop your own simulation? And that's what, I guess, that's also what Zuckerberg is doing through, in a very rudimentary way, the metaverse. I mean, I don't know if I want to go and, well, there's the most extreme side of the metaverse is like the holodeck in Star Trek, where you're living in reality. And I'm like, well, I want to take it up a notch, and I want to eat in the metaverse. I want to poop in the metaverse. Literally, I want to eat food and I want to poop it out and know that it actually has nutritional content. But is that going to happen? I don't know. I doubt it, unless we have scaled down our population. And so then, if you want to travel right now without having to go through all the BS of upgrading, well, traveling, you can go through your, your Google and your Google Maps and all your different YouTube videos, and then you also can develop your own world that you want to live in, how you're gonna do it. But you have to be able to have clarity on what you're developing, and that takes such a biochemical change. And that's the thing, and that's the world that I live in right now. Is I've had such a biochemical shift in everything that right now I've done a lot of traveling. I've done a lot of it, and I've done the back and forth from the U.S. And I know some people are in that process of going back and forth and getting on the road, doing the road trips and going to different countries. And I've done it. I mean, I'm almost 50 years old. I'll be 50 in a couple of years. And so now it's traveling through the brain. And I hope people that do start off their life right now trying to do the road trips back and forth, they survive it. And not because of the danger. Yeah, there's danger, but also this pandemic and their predispositions. Because when you're exposed to so many different people and all their antibiotic lifestyles and therapies, those things are going to work against you. And so then you really have to do things smart. If you're going to go and travel, you really have to recover from your travels. And if you haven't dealt with your predispositions, then you're just compounding all of your issues when you're traveling out there with so many people at different levels of decline and all the therapy statuses they're in. And so, I mean, do I have an answer for all this? I feel bad for those that are just starting out. Those that are like around my age, who've kind of done most of the stuff, you guys have a chance to finally start over again and biochemically, and you're not very curious out there too much. You're not feeling like you have to go and travel everywhere and be out there and about like people are right now, and you can actually sit home and start over again biochemically and feel the going back in time through your wormhole when you think about it, because all the B cell and T cell memories leaving your body, and they're going to cause pain on the way out. Yeah, but at least you're going to deal with it and develop new memories and assimilate, and then write about it, because writing is the chemistry. Writing is, I'm telling you, writing and then sleeping and eating and feeling the pain is what leveled me up. I saw in medical news today that they said that when you sleep after studying something, like I have, like when I was studying something and then I'm feeling the pain of feeling the viruses and whatever, and I take a nap, I wake up with new ideas. Sleeping gives you so much intelligence. When you're focusing on something and you're eating, you're dealing with the pain and releasing the mucus, you will have so much. It just depends, but it depends on what it is you're focusing on. I've been doing this whole thing with the book and the J juice and substantiating everything and all that, and so that's where all my awakenings are translating from or manifesting into. It is the book stuff that I'm doing. But let's say you're trying to figure out a problem with your company or with your kid or with, I don't know, some people don't even have a purpose. Right now they're in the process of developing a purpose. Okay, maybe you're in biotech and you want to go beyond just creating, enemies against people's bodies and the environment. Is there another way where people can assimilate without developing a programming that is creating enemies against the environment and against people's bodies? Because remember, viruses, parasites, protozoa, proteins, fungus, and bacteria are all part of your microbiome. And when you weaponize your own immune system against yourself, that's called death. Okay? So is there another way where you can have people assimilate to their environment without weaponizing their own bodies and the environment against them? That the viruses aren't the enemy, parasites aren't the enemy, the protozoa, the proteins, and the fungus and the bacteria are not the enemy. Why invest in antivirals, antifungals, antibacterial, anti-inflammatories? Why go down that road? And so if you finally change the biochemistry, maybe somebody in biotech can redirect the intentions of the Department of Defense of weaponizing the immune system and everything else against the people and start doing something different. Saying, okay, yeah, pain is necessary and it develops intelligence. Oh, but we have infrastructure. We have, well, that's why we are kind of transitioning. We're transitioning where you have the choice to work from home. Shit, I even found out the Silicon Valley, well, the Bay Area lost like over 300-something thousand people during the last couple of years because it's so expensive and now they're working from home. Okay, and so there is a way to be able to do stuff and deal with stuff, and you need more latitude from the employers. Someone like my husband, he has 10 years or so, 20 years, I guess, before he retires. 20 years before he retires. Because he's not 57. Shit. He's 20, he's 20 years. Is he going to last 20 years before he's able to go and reconfigure? He came from good stock. His dad's a pretty sturdy dude. His sisters are pretty sturdy. His brother is pretty sturdy. He's probably one of the most healthiest out of all of them, when you think about it. So if I can get him to kind of, if I can get him to survive the next 20 years while he's working, and then I can get him to get on the J-juice and release the fucking demons and feed so he can now finally make up for all the things that he has used up over the last how many years, he could survive this. And maybe in this environment, you might have to retire earlier or transition to I don't know. But I'm telling you guys need to figure out how to survive this. Let me tell you, when you finally, even a person who's like 20 years old, 30 years old, that's like all like, I want to go and travel everywhere. You know, the places will be there. The places will be there after you have finally taken care of yourself. It's not going away. Though I know with all this terraforming and geoengineering and stuff, you know, and the seas that are rising, you think that some of these places will disappear. Well, I mean, by the time that we really see all those, the climate changes and everything, there'll be places where there'll still be tropical waters and blue oceans and whatever. But I don't know, man. Because I lived in Hawaii, I don't have really any, and I lived in Florida, so I've done all of that. So I don't really need to do all of that, and I have no real need to go to Peru or any of these places where people go to because look for all the ancient ruins. It's not really anything. When I went to China, when I saw the Forbidden City and all the touristy places, I wasn't really. That didn't interest me. What interested me was more of the indigenous population, but then I was a little scared too because there's a lot of, it was just, people were poor. I was in a stone house where they were, you know, there's running water, but the drainage was like just on the ground. Like when you had the sink, you know, it's just draining onto the ground. It wasn't going into any kind of, you know, filtration system. It was just out there. So it was kind of a trip, but that's what I wanted to learn about was how people lived, and why, I don't know, because I see even here in Ohio there's some, you know, it's interesting. I live amongst a lot of different types, and yeah, a lot of people are also very sick. So, anyways, let me get back to my main point. I don't know what my main point is now. What will people... we don't know. But here's the thing. It doesn't even matter what kind of humans will be left after this antibiotic purge. You have to survive it. You must. You guys on my Facebook, you guys got to survive this. You know, there isn't enough money in the world to make me happy. I don't need all that money in the world. I don't need all that social capital. I don't need all that, the social shit. I don't need all the material stuff. I don't even need to make it big. What is making it big? I already made it big and it was a headache. I already had people, you know, stalking me and shit from 50 million accounts, and they just don't get it. Luckily they're in Africa. But it's like, you know, you don't, making it big doesn't, you know what will make, what could hit big is when you develop something completely that is different, that you corner the market in something. You look at what everybody else is doing and how they're doing it, and it's all repackaged bullshit. But you develop something completely different. But you have to know the market. I already know I corner the market. I corner the market. Immortality, yeah, can be perceived in so many different ways out there. People like Ray Kurzweil and all of his transhumanism. Yeah, this is more immortality. Okay. Not really. It's all machinery, and then, turn you off and on using nanotechnology. But immortality is something that when you are living indefinitely and you're not taking all the cures or the therapies, and you're feeling the pain, and you're releasing the mucus, and you understand that you have to release mucus, that's where all the programming is. And you understand the intelligence comes from the fact that you can release your own demons through your sphincter, which is what the latest thing that I told you guys about that I didn't tell you guys for the longest time because of how taboo it is. You know why it's so taboo? Because that's a fucking secret. That's what's been hidden from you in plain sight, is that you're being controlled through your sphincter because you can't release at the maximum level and you don't know how to control that, and it's atrophied, so you're holding on to all this shit. That's why bellies get bigger and people are more obese. And then through your mouth, when you're taking the Mucinex and the Theraflus and the Claritins and all the different over-the-counter drugs to stop your mucus here, they just atrophied your first lines of defense. And so you're keeping all these deadly T cells and B cells eating you out from the inside, commandeering your system and causing the hormonal imbalances. So I've cornered the market, and then realizing that the whole thing with Anunnaki is really about the anus and all that shit, and man and woman, which is now being, the labels are in the process of being transitioned out to now binary versus non-binary. And why we have androgynous people? Yeah, because we had a very specific programming called the man and the woman with very specific characteristics and very specific duties and what is it, division of labor back in the 50s. Yeah, I mean, I play that 50s household. My husband's out there mowing the lawn and doing stuff on the outside and fixing shit, and I'm cooking and cleaning, and taking care of the dog and doing the dishes and taking care of the garbage and doing the laundry and doing this at the same time. So it works. That simulation works. And he's a very much a man's man. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a girly girl. I'm very much like a tomboy. Okay. But, and so even though that's the roles that we've taken on, it works, because he doesn't have to worry about cooking. He doesn't have to worry about shopping unless I feel sick or I don't want to go out there because of whatever. And so it's a way to organize a life and a lifestyle that works, that will allow us to keep progressing so we don't have chaos. But nowadays roles are switching. Nowadays a man can have a womb. Okay, and not a big deal. It's just whatever. You can always change people's biochemistry through different CRISPR gene editing, through whatever. It's not a big deal. But then when you're doing the J juice and you're uncured and you are dealing with all the different viruses, regardless whether you're binary or non-binary, man or woman, your hormones will calm down. Whatever they are, whether it's the anger, the sexuality, whether it's all the depression and all the things that people are taking hormone replacement therapies and all the things that they have to go and balance out, your hormones are going to calm down, even out, and you'll sleep good. You'll sleep very well. You'll be tired at the right times. You'll have a there'll be certain memories of things that when you read about stuff like things like PTSD, and you come across someone that may have developed, that may have caused PTSD just from because of stuff that you read, and now you have access to a specific type of person who maybe caused the PTSD. I'm not gonna say too much because I don't want to be like. You'll think about it. You'll be like, wow, oh my God. You'll go over in your mind like, wow, oh wow, they have access to me. Holy shit, what does that mean? Da, da, da. And then you're like, oh wait, hold on. And then a couple of days later, it's not an issue. like you're not obsessing over it. So something that you may have brought up a memory of something, or something that brought up a fear or whatever, you won't be obsessing and looping over it. It won't even be influential in your life. It'll be just like, okay, and that's it. And then your logic and your reasoning, and you look back on that day, and it was like a couple weeks ago, and you're like, oh, it's no big deal. The memory just left. All that anxiety around that specific thing just left. And so that's what's available for people who go through this process. Is their hormones will calm down, the anxieties will calm down. At some point, you're going to have a lot of anxiety, a lot of hormone shit going on during the process of fluctuations. Let me tell you, I went through it. Okay, but eventually you're going to have like a nice even, and the way you look at the world be so different. And then you see all the people's hormones and all of their reactions, everything, because everything is hair trigger. Because things are coming to the surface. And so, I don't know, I mean, that's just, but people don't understand this reality because they live in their own they're living with their memories. People are living with their memories, and that is their reality. And you can't say that they're wrong in their reality. They're not wrong, because that's their world. And when someone lives in that in whatever reality they're in, whether it's depression or anxiety or anger, A-N-G, like ang, out of your anus, happiness is basically orgasmic, right? Oh, I'm so happiness. You know what I mean? Like all these feelings are from hormones. Am I happy or sad or anxiety? No, I'm just am. You know, I get excited when my dog eats and I don't have to prompt her. But, you know, right now I have to kind of prompt her and stuff. Sometimes I get kind of like, oh God, you know, when she falls down the steps or falls on this, because she hasn't figured out her footing yet. And, you know, like she's like reborn. So I take her on the walk over here in the front steps. It's all stone, and she goes down fine, but going up, she gets too excited, and then she misses footing, and I'm like, oh my God. So I have to watch her going up these damn steps. But no different than the ones over here in the backyard. You know, there are a lot more steps. And so now, you know, so until she gets her strength back, you know, I have to really watch her. So there's gonna be that kind of PTSD. But it'll get me until I get her all up to a certain point. Then you just keep progressing. But I'm telling you guys are living with your memories. You have so many memories, so many B cells and T cell memories, that when you hear something, see something, eat something, it brings up a trigger. That's what they say, trigger alert, on TV or sensitive content, or on Facebook. Oh, trigger! And you see people freaking out. Yeah. People have so many B cell, T cell memories in their body, controlling every reaction. And so it took me finally to scale down my social lifestyle, which really wasn't. It was my husband's lifestyle that I was trying to fit into. But he realizes now he can't make me be friends with everybody that he's friends with. I like people, but not everybody understands me. I'll try to fit in, and then I end up, let me tell you, I went to a party a couple years, like back in 2016. I got so drunk, I was throwing up. It was probably the worst I've ever, like, it was bad. I was throwing up everywhere. Okay, I barely crawled to the bathroom. It was that bad. Okay, I don't do that anymore. I don't drink. I don't smoke pot. I'll smoke occasional cigarette. Even then, that isn't always appetizing. I only smoke cigarettes when I'm thinking. And my body creates the T cells and all that stuff, and then it releases and all that. And I mean, yeah, it's carcinogenic to those who have already an overabundance of T cells, because yeah, it has specific properties that you'll create a memory from it, and the body will release it. I don't, smoke a whole bunch, but sometimes I like to have the chemistry, be added to my thought process, and it helps me cement things. And so, but that's it. But that's and I'll drink a little bit of coffee. So my life is very much in my head. My life is about intellectually developing myself and learning how to, the writing will come. It's the ideas that I have to bring together. But that comes from releasing those excess memories and developing new ones. And so my dog keeps me going. My husband keeps me going. You know, you guys keep me going. I keep myself going. I have hope for the future, which is hope for today. I know that everything that I'm doing and what I'm going to do or whatever is going to be fine. I have strategies for things that might come up that I won't expect, but I do expect. When you say you're prepared for the unexpected, you expect it. You just don't know when. There's nothing unexpected out there in the world. You know how things work. You've seen what could happen in every given situation because there's insurance against it. There's laws against it. So everything that you are preparing for that's unexpected, you expect it to happen, and which means that you must prepare for it as if it was going to happen. Okay? And so I have the plan A's, plan B's, plan C's, and plan D's, and plan E's. And that's the whole JJ Meta mentality, is planning. It's all planning for the unexpected because you expect it to happen at some point. It may not happen. Everything has the potential to happen. But you know you live in a world where shit happens all the time. And you can't assume it's not going to happen. So if you plan for the unexpected, then you'll know how to deal with it when it comes. As far as cancer, disease, and chronic illness, when you deal with somebody else's defenses, like their antibiotics from their boogers and their mucus and their mucus, if you don't deal with it as soon as it comes through your environment, it'll turn into cancer. You suppress it with remedies and you suppress it with cures and therapies. You will get cancer, disease, chronic illness, and or will die. That's it. And so I expect that I will get some form of somebody's situation that if I don't deal with it at the time that it comes, it will turn into cancer. So I can't play this game of, oh, I'll be cured. I mean, you can do it for a minute, but no, if you're going to take on a cure, you're teaching your body to develop defenses against whatever's in that cure. Am I going to do that? No. Which means that I have to really build my body up to be so strong that the only thing that I feel is the heat flush from my body developing defenses against something that it's exposed to without it turning into a huge respiratory infection. That's what the infection is. That's what respiratory infections are, is that, yes, they got past your first lines of defense, and now there's huge mucus replication, and or it woke up something in your body that needed, like when I had that respiratory infection like a year ago, it was based upon the year before that when I wasn't taking the COVID. Well, I was taking it seriously, but no one else was. So I had to go to the wedding. I had to go to the bachelor party. I had to go to all the different things that were like gatherings with people. And this is in 2020. And so I paid for it in 2021. Okay? 2022. And so anyways, you will have to deal with things as it comes. You cannot put things to the side. You cannot take shit not seriously. You have to take everything seriously. So anyways, I'm going to go, but the heat flush is when you finally get your first lines of defense, and you're not having all these different crazy reactions. Like, you have to go through the hives. Everybody holds some kind of form of HIV in them. Everyone holds some form of that infection in them. And so that has to come to surface. Rashes, everything you've ever used something against or been exposed to, but it never really expressed, it has to come to surface. You got to deal with it. If you don't deal with it, when it comes up, it'll come back in a more aggressive form. When someone says, oh, I never had COVID. I had the therapy and I had all these different remedies. You have it. It's just a matter of when it's going to come up in cancer, disease, and chronic illness and autoimmune disorders. But you have it. Everything the media has ever told you that has been exposed, that's been circulating, even the Ebola, it's out there. Is it going to rear its ugly head? Who knows? Maybe it already has. You don't know. I mean, that's the thing, is you don't know unless you're told that there is this kind of virus in the environment. You don't know until you feel something. Not that you want to test for every single one of them, but it's going to come out in some way, shape, or form. You got to deal with it, or it will deal with you. And right now, all these different viruses that people are ignoring, taking therapies for, and all that stuff is coming out in obesity, emaciation, cancer disease, chronic illness, autoimmune disorders, and or depression, anxiety, anger, just you name it. This is the zombie apocalypse. This is what the CDC was talking about. They understand what's going on. They know exactly what's going on. They know as soon as something like this is going to happen, and it's going to stimulate people's immune systems who hold so many of those little microbes within them that were under some kind of anesthetization are going to wake up, and it's going to come to surface, and it's going to be put out there in the population. It's going to mix with everybody, and people are going to be reacting to it. And they're going to have weird behaviors. And so they know exactly. That's why all these zombie movies and the vampire movies are coming out. Just like all the serial killer stuff back in the 80s. Serial killer stuff and all the sexuality and the stuff in the 80s. Jesus God. And now we have the zombie apocalypse and the werewolves and the vampires, the vampiresses. Yeah, art reflects, reality, and reality reflects art, whatever. And you got to be aware of it. And so if you think that you can be cured for a certain amount of time, okay. But you pay now or you pay later. And when you pay later, it's going to be 10 times as worse. Just ask a cancer patient or someone in hospice. Their lifestyle of always being under cures has now brought them to that point of where they are in hospice now. And they're in palliative care. Because they never dealt with those things when it came through. They were always putting it to the back burner, using a therapy against it. And those T cells and B cells cannibalize people because they're not releasing. Their sphincter has been atrophied and right here has been disabled. And so now they're getting everything. And they don't want to feel mucus or pain or anything. They don't want any break in their stride. And you see people change. You watch them change. They do because of all that. All right, I'm going to go. You guys have a good day. Bye.